Hey guys. So today we're gonna talk about the rise of Skywalker. Today it's the night of the 27th of December 2019. Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, has been out for a week now. We saw it last week on opening night, on the night of the 19th. And now, after 1 week, we've been picking our topics and on what we wanted to talk about. We have our likes and dislikes. And okay, so I'm gonna talk about myself first. I'm from Thailand. My name is Charlie. So I came to New York to study films because of the love of Star Wars. That's my passion. And here's my friend from school, Lewis.
Hey,
So why do you like Star Wars, Lewis?
I like Star Wars because it's a very universal tale about love, sacrifice, and those sorts of themes sort of appeal to all sorts of people. Men, women, Thai, Ecuadorian, American, it doesn't matter. People all over the world, they love Star Wars, they live and breathe Star Wars.
So the main idea behind this is that Star Wars brought us all together, even though we're completely from different parts of the world. So let's talk about. We were gonna do this last week, but we have our lives and stuff, and so right now we just finished watching the Mandalorian on Disney Plus.
Amazing episode.
Amazing episode. We might do this later, like if we have time, because maybe next week when we have time we'll talk about more about the Mandalorian. I think kudos to John Favreau for doing this, and whatever, I can't pronounce his name. Taiki Waititi something.
Yes.
Amazing in directing the last episode, the Chapter 8 Redemption.
He
Oh my
deserves his
God.
own shot at directing a movie one day.
He does. And just to add to the Mandalorian, I met the Moff. What's his name? Moff Tark. How do you pronounce his name?
Moff Gideon.
Moff Gideon himself last year when I was working. I met him at my workplace. I talked to him for like 20 minutes. I didn't know if he was cast in the role back then, but I told him like, he's a film director and he's an actor. So just because a small world, he used to my professor at school, Larry Banks, used to work with him in like 20 years ago or something, with him and also with Forrest Whitaker. So I was talking, Professor Banks is my professor at school. It's like, oh, okay, let's make sure to say hi to Professor Banks. And we were talking about something else. And what's your passion? What's my passion? And I mentioned Star Wars, and it was like, no, I came here for Star Wars, for the love of Star Wars. And he was like stunned for a second. I didn't know back then if he was already cast in this role or not. But I got to talk to him. It was a really good conversation. So okay, let's move on to our critiques on the Rise of Skywalker. So let's first, I watched it 4 times in 4 days. First 2 with this dude, and the other 2 like alone. So first reaction, let's be honest, okay? We're all Star Wars fans here, and we are all allowed to have our own ideas on the movie. Our initial reaction.
I was completely disappointed.
Me too.
Time. This guy actually was the first one, the only one clapping at the end, and he felt so embarrassed.
When you are watching with the first time opening night, especially like midnight and stuff. When the opening crawl comes up, you're like, oh yeah, clap. It was like people weren't clapping that much. I was like, there was a sense that people.
There was a sense of great disappointment.
People knew going in, it's gonna be, it wasn't gonna live up to the expectation. But all in all, I tried to be optimistic but still, I would say this. The more times I watch, the more I enjoy and try to let go of the perspective and the expectation and the fallout of the negativity of the Last Jedi. Coming to think of it, there's a hashtag going on. Thank you, Ryan Johnson, going on because people are comparing the way JJ was writing and directing, comparing to the Last Jedi, which received a lot of negative criticism. To compare to him, like there were more stories, more how do you say this, more
He brought in an original
idea of
flair to
himself.
Star Wars as opposed to J.J. Abrams, who is very famous for making homages to previous work. That's
Yeah.
his thing.
Okay, so let's dive into the specific topics that we jotted down from the Rise of Skywalker. So let's first let's discuss and we'll summarize on what we like and what we dislike. And first, we're gonna talk about the things we like. I think we can agree.
We
On
can
the first one.
definitely agree that there's a lot of well-written chemistry between Finn and Poe.
Yes, that was the thing I love. I noticed the first one in the first
It really sold me to the idea that they were friends, they have history together, and it just makes me disappointed that we didn't get that in The Last Jedi
Yes,
as much.
because they were separated, right? They
Yeah, they
went
were
to
separated
Canto
for
Bight. Paul was on the ship, and Rose and Finn went to Canto Bight, right?
yeah, which in retrospect, that probably was a bad decision. It should have been Poe and Finn.
It's okay. I think that was, I don't know. It was okay for me, But definitely the chemistry between Poe and Finn, that's what we like, and the love chemistry. The love chemistry of Reylo, so Kylo Ren and the Rey. And I'm quoting this. Open bracket on this and disregard the principle of love structure of Disney, which is like Disney tends to be their love story or love structure tends to be like everything is going well and stuff and happy ending, but I think they had to go through some kind of.
I think you're actually kind of wrong on this because there is a movie that reminds me a lot of the relationship, plot line between Rey and Kylo Ren. I would say it's Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. Okay. Coming to think of, yeah. It does. Maybe I might be wrong on this one.
Because Kylo Ren initially, is this monster. He's a try-hard monster trying to be in touch with the dark side. But once he comes into contact with Rey, he slowly starts to, crack little by little. And this is especially pronounced in this movie. We're doing spoilers, right? And as part of our
review. I forgot to mention. Don't watch this if you haven't watched The Rise of Skywalker yet. But it's been a week now. We're gonna post this.
Exactly.
We're gonna post this on YouTube, on Facebook, and if I can, we're gonna post it on Instagram. But by now, Star Wars fans should have seen it. It's been a week.
You know what? Fuck it. I was extremely skeptical of Reylo. I was completely against the idea in The Force Awakens. I slightly warmed up to it with The Last Jedi, especially watching it multiple times. And this movie really sold me. It really sold me of how, especially when Rey and Kylo Ren were fighting on the ocean moon of Endor.
Okay.
And she wounded him, but she healed him. And it sort of pushed him towards rejecting Kylo and becoming Ben Solo again.
It's sort of a poetic or like metaphorical that Rey is killing Kylo Ren.
She murdered Kylo Ren and brought back Ben Solo. And when you think about it, that is kind of reminiscent that is one of the few poetic things
about
about
The
Star
Last
Wars. It
Jedi.
does tie it in. Like it's not exactly a repeat. It's a rhyming of a particular plot element. I loved it. I loved Reylo. I stan it completely. I'm just extremely mad of how it ended.
We'll talk about that later.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next thing that we like, it's the new lightsaber, Rey's
I liked
lightsaber.
it.
Yellow.
And I think it's built out of her staff, I believe.
Really?
It looked like it was built out of
One
her
thing
staff.
though, she didn't show the bottom of the hilt, so it might be a double blade. Because she turned it on, she ignites it only on the top part, which you can see on the bottom of the screen. On the hilt, it's actually the same. There's a the same way she turned on. I don't think she pressed it. She sort of turned it, and on the bottom of the screen, it's also the same component. So it might be a double blade.
Could be.
You never know because they're not showing it. They're showing it when she ignites it on the first one.
I did like the color. It's very symbolic because yellow is associated with the Jedi Sentinels from the Jedi Temple.
That's a temple. So she's sort of.
So she is now, in a sense,
protecting
the guardian, the protector of the legacy of the Jedi, and she'll be entrusted with the task of rebuilding the Jedi Order.
No, I didn't know that before. You were singing in there. That's really good. Okay. So, next topic would be the ones that we dislike, which are so many. Okay. Let me remind you again. We're doing this because we love Star Wars.
Like, if you really want to watch this movie, and if you still like this movie upon watching it, don't let this change your opinion, because movies, how you perceive your enjoyment of movies is completely subjective to what your tastes are like. My tastes are different from Charlie's, and Charlie's is different from whoever's listening.
Okay. So let's start on the first one, on the one that we dislike. Pacing.
I felt like there was way too much happening within 2.5 hours.
2.5. I think the action was like 2:10, including the after credits of like 2:20, 2:22.
I just did not like it. It's just that maybe it's just my brain, but there was just too much happening bit by bit by bit, and I couldn't have a time to just digest the plot and just to sit and enjoy it. Like, as soon as they started one plot point, they concluded it and went on to the next thing.
There was no pause. Like, there was no, and this is on the second topic as well, there was no poetry between each scene that they're changing to. Like, when Lucas did it, it was like they were, when they're about to change into a different location, when they're about to change the mood of the scene, there tends to be more. The way they do it is just, we feel that they're just doing it out of ideas because they were out of time. The creativity behind these people just like being pushed by the executives as Disney, or it might not be Disney, or they are pushed because this timeline, they have to meet by this timeline only. Other than that, because they won't make it to the final cut or something.
Now, I will say this. I don't envy J.J. Abrams. He was put in a very difficult position.
Very difficult.
People, whatever you feel about The Last Jedi, it was it was a very controversial film.
It was
controversial, and a lot of people didn't like it. And I feel like with this movie, he tried to
finish everything.
He tried to do 2 movies and combine them into one.
Yes. It can be extended into longer movies, but obviously you can't do like episode 9 part 1, episode 9 part 2.
Not. This isn't Harry Potter.
You can't do that with Star Wars.
Exactly.
I mean, like the episode, but in the future you can do it, but in the Skywalker saga you can't do it. It's got to finish in that episode.
Exactly. So J.J. Abrams, I'm not a fan exactly of his work, but he
Pacing
was he was
was
short he was shortchanged by Ryan Johnson, so I assume the pacing was what it is because
he only had like 1 year to
he
do.
had to up
He was brought in after Colin was fired.
exactly, and he had to pretty much try to spend the first half of this movie essentially saying, "We're sorry that the Last Jedi exists. We'll just go over these plot points. We'll disregard them." Like in the very beginning, where Kylo said, "Oh, I killed Snoke." Palpatine essentially summed up his origin story. I created Snoke. That's it. Done.
That's it. That's just so like, and the way
Hodo maneuver, 1 in a million chance. Can't be done.
I think he did it in when they were. I saw it in the second viewing of mine that they did a Hodo maneuver in the on the planet of Ewok. The when they were showing the Star Destroyers, it was split in half. On Endor.
Yeah. I don't.
I don't know.
Understand.
I don't understand.
That was inconsistent.
I don't
Like,
know.
how can you say it's a 1 in a million chance, and then show that?
I don't get it at all. Like why are they trying to add that into a scene which doesn't make sense
But
at all.
like you said, JJ was given like about a year.
I think he was given like a year or a minus or something because
It felt very inconsistent.
it felt like he was just putting it there. It felt like when they were at a meeting, right? They were just think of this, think of this, think of this, think of this, and they're like, okay, let's go, let's do this, 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 without like having the time. When you do this, it's like for let's say for George Lucas, even though 40 years ago when he started this with the technology that they had doing for in the when they were building the first trilogy like in 1997, A New Hope came out, and 3 years later 1980 it's Empire Strikes Back, and another 3 years later it's Return of the Jedi. Those time were given 3 years, and for the for the prequel trilogy it was 3 years, even
it was
though
3 years,
3 years.
think,
between everything. No, between everything. Or,
between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and I think it was
1999 for the Phantom Menace, and 2002 for the Attack of the Clones, and 2005 for Revenge of the Sith. So they were all 3 years apart, even though the time has changed. 16 years later, from 1987, 1983 to 1999. They're 16 years apart, and they're still doing. George was still doing 3 years apart per film. And then 10 years later, from Revenge of the Sith to The Force Awakens, it was only 2 years.
It was 2 years.
2
per
years.
each sequel film.
And it felt like, and 2 years, right? 2000. Force Awakens 2015. 2017 was The Last Jedi.
And 2019 was The Rise of Skywalker.
It's the Rise of Skywalker. So 2 years apart. But it was given like a year more. That means a lot to the team and the creativity when they're writing something as well. Like you gotta, for people who are not in the film industry, so when you write, you gotta go through rewrites lots and lots of times. And then when you actually have principal photography, you still do have reshoots after the first editing, like the first cut of the film. You see what works and what doesn't work, and then you reshoot. And it feels like the last Rise of Skywalker, they're just doing it just to finish everything up. They don't have the time to add in several things as well.
But I believe that was intentional because they had to make up for the controversial The Last Jedi.
Okay, I'm adding something new here. So, yeah, we went through pacing and no poetry. And another thing I would say, the no poetry would be they gotta mention always everything, like when they're about to go to different planet, let's go here. It wasn't like Lucas's when you just show the planet and
Exactly.
you just show the planet and people know that this is called, let's say, Alderaan. This is called Naboo. This is called Mustafa. It was actually put into a sentence where it's not like Jijimi, Exegol, or something like. And by the way, I gotta add one more thing. I don't like the names of the names of sequel at all, especially the name of the planets. It feels like
It's not very memorable at all.
at all. It felt it's like it feels like Star Trek.
Well, for me, again,
Exeg-
this is more with the pacing. I feel like there were way too many planets that were being shown. They could have just condensed it a little bit, like with the Burning Man sequence, and then the planet where they were trying to get C-3PO to decipher the Sith artifact. They could have just combined those to just one planet.
Oh.
My personal feeling.
With that, I think that's a decision where they were,
because there was
they
no
had to meet.
There was no need to have a separate planet.
I understand that, but I think for Star Wars you need to have certain numbers of planets and certain numbers of location.
It would be funny if that was a rule. I wasn't aware of that.
I think it is, because you have to, with every new Star Wars movies, you have to create.
I know with Phantom Menace, it was Naboo, Tatooine, they showed Coruscant, and what else did they show?
I think it's only Naboo,
Coruscant, and Tatooine.
Yeah. Only
and
three.
then Attack of the Clones, it was Geonosis, Coruscant, Naboo, Tatooine again.
That was it?
Did I mention Camino?
Not yet. Camino.
Yeah, Camino.
Camino.
And Revenge of the Sith was...
Mustafar.
Well, I'm doing it in order. Coruscant, Mustafar, Utapau. There were all those other planets in those short sequences, like Felucia.
When the Jedi were killed.
Yeah.
What's
Polis Massa.
Kashyyyk.
Polis Massa, the space station.
Mm-hmm. And even with those planets, you didn't have to mention, like, you know.
No, it was mentioned always in the dialogue.
Yeah, but
it comes in
naturally, and yeah. And that's the thing that we want to talk about as well, like, but let's talk next one as well, and then let's put Lucas's soul writing at the end. Okay, next one would be adding way too many characters. I have no time to digest.
This is partially related to the pacing. Like for Zori, when they were on that planet whatever it was.
Which one?
Kashimi, the one. Kachimi, yeah. Sorry, that's how bad I don't barely remember the name of that planet.
the name of the planets. I feel like when we mention the name of the planets, it doesn't feel like Star Wars at all. It feels like Star Trek to me. So much. There's no poetry. Like, let's say you mention, like, let's go back to that for a second, okay? Mustafar, Tatooine, Dantooine, Naboo, Coruscant. It means something because it feels like they researched the name on what they want this planet to represent. So they have that name coming up, represent the name. So Coruscant means light and something, right?
And Tatooine is actually the name of a desert town in Tunisia.
Something like, so they research a name. These things means a lot. And Naboo, I like Naboo. It's like, Mustafar, anger and stuff, like burning fire, lava. Those kind of places represent
Camino,
something.
endless ways with the buildings on top.
Yes, And that's what's missing from Star Wars so much. I missed that so much. Like Act 2, Act 2,
Dakar,
the
Taco Dana,
Pasadena.
Jakku,
What the
Hosnian Prime.
oh, terrible names. Terrible names. Oh, when you come to think of it, I don't know what they're doing with the names of Star
Now,
Wars
getting back
planets.
to the point,
Okay,
when
let's
they
go.
were on that planet Kishi, whatever it was,
Pachimi.
Rey and her friends, they got on the planet, they met up with Zori, and her plot was pretty much like done within 5 to 10 minutes. Like she was there and then she was out. And the same thing with Jana. I felt that Jana was put in place because people hated Rose.
What do you mean? Which one?
Jana, the other chick, the chick with the horses.
Oh, okay.
Because who else is known for riding on horses? Rose. She felt like she was just added in there just to make people realize, okay, you hate this person, we'll add someone new. And they sidelined Rose because people hated her. She was only there for 70 seconds.
Not a minute, right? Well, that. Okay, next one.
Yeah, next one.
Next one. JJ's into hints like Game of Thrones. So this is the reaction like I saw on JJ's face, and I can sense which he wasn't like as excited as at the Star Wars Celebration Chicago when he was like, "Are you ready to see the film?" And then boop, show the trailer. Are you ready to see the trailer? Yes, and show the trailer, and it pretty much resembles the cast when when I saw the cast of Game of Thrones when they were asked about what do you think of the final episode of Game of Thrones, like you can't wait. They weren't as enthusiastic about it because they knew people wouldn't like it. And JJ, I just saw an interview of JJ that he said critics are right. No matter how much he tries, no matter how the Star Wars sagas ended, people are gonna hate it, and people are gonna have like us, controversial over like nitpicking over little details. We are because, as I said,
We're
like
criticizing it from a place of love. We're not criticizing it just to hate it. Because if we really hated it, we wouldn't spend our time talking about it or
Yes.
watching it.
or come over to a friend's place and
Exactly.
do this kind of review. And so next one, JJ was hired to finish, not to create a final. Okay, so JJ Abrams, we feel like JJ Abrams was the safety net of Lucasfilm.
I mean, I
Because-
understand the storyline. Like he initially was put on board for The Force Awakens,
And he had that whole treatment out for Ryan Johnson's, which he threw away in the garbage,
right.
which was the right thing, I think.
I think my point is more that when with Force Awakens, he was intentionally picked because he would create something that would reinvigorate Star Wars and bring back the OT fans
Yes.
and offer them something slightly new but mostly familiar. And he succeeded at that.
He succeeded
Force
at-
Awakens made
$2 billion.
$2 billion. But for me, this movie, it felt not so much like its own Star Wars movie. It felt more like this is like a greatest hits remix of a CD of my favorite band. That's what it felt like. Like a diet version of Star Wars.
Okay. Yeah, he was hired, just to finish everything. Like,
I think he even said, you know what, fuck it, I'll just...
whatever he was gonna do, like nobody's gonna, be like, "Oh, JJ, you did a good job finishing the Skywalker saga."
I assume he's not complaining about his paycheck, though.
I don't think so too. So next one. Fight scenes between Rey, Kylo Ren, and Palpatine.
I would say that's probably it was my least favorite part of the film.
Yes.
Mostly because I didn't see Palpatine pick up a lightsaber.
Yes, that was a missed opportunity for us. Like when we first discussed this,
Like there was this scene where Palpatine is essentially absorbing the energy from
Life force
both the
from
life force from both Ben and Rey,
Mm.
and one would assume that he would be completely at his prime, like he was in Revenge of the Sith. Just like pick a lightsaber and start dueling the
or
both
even
of them.
or even the Clone Wars, because in the Clone Wars he was fighting Darth Maul and Savage Opress, and he was fighting him on Mandalore. It was like twisting and turning and jumping. Like we sort of felt that it was a missed opportunity to, you know. And this goes back to, you know, to the point of making, like, they just want to finish this. They're not like just like, you know how they're in a room like thinking, you know, how are we gonna, you know, finish the film? Rey gonna defeat the Palpatine. How are we gonna execute this? Like, oh no, just
make her pick two lightsabers.
You know, just the way in the like in Return of the Jedi, you know, where Palpatine just force lightning Luke and force lightning Rey, and then Rey gonna why don't we change it to Rey's gonna use two lightsabers and then, you know, bounce the lightning back to himself and kill himself.
Mace Windu wishes he knew that.
This feels like, I don't know if they thought of it and it would be too much or something, but
like for me, I'm not really complaining about the fact that Rey beat Palpatine. I felt
it was gonna
the way that Palpatine lost. It was too easy. It was too easy.
It was too easy. Like we felt like over the course of 9 movies, this is how he dies. Like
what's the point of bringing him back if he's just gonna die like a bitch?
At all, like he should at least, you know, fight. You know, he's in his prime because he just sucked the life force out of Ben Solo and Rey.
And this is partially, well, this should have been mentioned in my likes. I like Ian McDiarmid. He is one of my favorite actors out of the cast in Star Wars. Even with the prequels, which people, for whatever reason, they kind of not liked it, his acting has always been complimented. And I felt that given the material that he was given, he did his best. And I enjoyed it.
We spent a lot of time talking about this. Yeah.
But he deserves better.
Yeah.
And I think there were slight rumors of Matt Smith joining the cast of Rise of Skywalker, and people assumed that he would play a young Palpatine. So this is what I assume. This is my take. So I don't know if there's any contradictory information. My thing is like during one of the drafts for the treatment or the script, when Palpatine was absorbing the life force out of both Ben and Rey, he would de-age and become Matt Smith. And that way you would have a young Palpatine versus Rey and Ben.
That's interesting. But Matt Smith's like way taller than Ian.
Yeah, but they could have made it work.
No. Next, Rey Palpatine.
I felt that when Kylo said it, it was done nonchalantly. Like Adam Driver was like, "Oh yeah, you're a Palpatine." There was no impact with it. Like when Luke found out that he was Darth Vader's son, there was resonance with it. Like, Obi-Wan told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father. That's not true. That's impossible. Like, I felt that. because like as a kid you idolize like your father or whoever is your parental figure, and for a kid to watch like his hero to find out that his father is the bad guy, like that's a plot twist. That's like one of the biggest plot twists in cinema history. Meanwhile with this, you're like, oh yeah, she's a Palpatine, that's why she knows how to do all this Force bullshit from the get-go, which kind of explains it, but it's not really satisfactory. Because, like with Luke Skywalker, he's the son of the chosen one, but he still had to go through some training, and he still got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
Now with Rey, I don't hate Rey. I don't even hate Daisy Ridley. It's just that I wish that Rey was given the opportunity to fail. Because failure is an opportunity to grow and to learn. I felt that Rey hasn't learned anything. For me, I don't know. And plus it defeats the purpose. Rey, in The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren said, "You're nobody. Your parents were filthy junk traders." It's contradictory. That's what I'm trying to say. It's contradictory.
It is.
What do you think, Charlie?
It contradicts, they're trying to make it, they're basically trying to say, give the middle finger to Ryan Johnson's The Last Jedi.
Exactly.
Like, you're nobody, your parents are nobody. Filthy trade junkers, giving you away for drinking money. Like,
that was the line. Meanwhile, with The Rise of Skywalker, it was, your parents are nobody.
They chose to be nobody.
But they chose to be nobody. Your father is the son of Palpatine. Which makes you realize, did Palpatine fuck when he was Chancellor, or when he became when he got that face? So try to picture that. Try to picture when Darth Sidious was making all those funny faces in Revenge of the Sith. Power! Unlimited power! It was funny. I like the idea of Palpatine, of scrotum face, of messing around. That was funny.
So now this goes to when he had his son. How old do you think he was?
Well, I looked up the actor who played Palpatine's son, and he was 38 when Rey was like 4. I think, like from the timeline, Palpatine almost definitely had his son while he was Emperor.
Okay. When Emperor? 4 to 5, 4 to 6.
Before 4. Before 4, I think. Slightly before 4.
So Jedi never... Oh, excuse me. Found out that Palpatine had a son.
I think it was like... Let's be honest. It's funny, but it's not exactly unrealistic, because lots of politicians, lots of powerful figures have concubines and baby mamas. He probably had a son that he wasn't aware of or he didn't care about and just became a filthy junk trader. That could happen.
That could happen. Or he was at some, like Game of Thrones.
Or Palpatine's son, Palpatine was aware he had a son. The son didn't have any Force potential, and he discarded him. Like, he told him, like, fuck off, go somewhere else.
Or he was hidden away, or he didn't know that he had a son because he was fooling around like on some planets and stuff, and
Exactly.
so there's a backstory.
Now there's a question: who would give up the ass to Palpatine?
What do you mean?
Who did Palpatine smash? That's a question.
Who is Palpatine's
Who is Palpatine's baby mama? Who does he owe child support to?
Oh, that's an interesting
All right.
one.
Next point.
So jumping location to location, we covered this already.
Yes.
It was not poetic at all. Opening sequence lost its magic.
That I think is related to the pacing because they did that light speed jumping.
Oh yeah, no, but I mean like when they were, I mean.
Oh right.
When they just remember, I think this was. I'm not sure. I forgot about this. Every Star Wars opening sequence would be tilted up, but only one film before this was given the honor of tilting down. That was Attack of the Clones. I think there was Attack of the Clone, and I knew that JJ would definitely want this honor for sure of tilting down. Then it tilted down to Mustafar.
Yeah. Although people, that's the thing. A lot of people on the internet were not even sure it was Mustafar.
What it was.
Because you don't. In the last time we've seen Mustafar in Rogue One, we don't see forests.
Yes, but you have to realize that we're talking about planets here, and
not every planet has a single biome.
Yes, so we are only visiting one, let's say one city or one part of the city, and there are, just like Earth, there are continents of lands and stuff we haven't visited yet. So there's still, JJ was still, lighting wise was, how to say this, using red. So Mustafar is red. He was still using red as a main color on the planet, which when I found out like a couple of days ago that was the first planet is Mustafar. Oh, it makes sense to for the Wayfinder to be there, and
I felt that scene was a little too short.
It was really short, and when the reason why I said it slots its magic because it tends to be a story which wasn't cut like
what prompted Kylo
it was built into
specifically
something.
Go to
Yes, it was like
Mustafar.
But after the opening sequence it was like cut, and then he finds a Wayfinder and then jumps a ship and fly to Exegol. Like it was too fast, way too fast. It was like way too fast. That's why it was no magic at all. You ease into it like every other, like you can't beat A New Hope opening sequence when we're rebels. Is Tantive is escaping the Star Destroyer. Second,
And to briefly mention one other thing, in the opening crawl they mentioned that Palpatine basically, he announced that he was back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't we hear that? You think that would be something to add in the very beginning of the movie for Palpatine to announce that he is back and he is back with a vengeance. You know what's the sad thing? They had Palpatine's speech. The actual speech where he's saying, "I'm back, bitch," on Fortnite. Not on the movie. On a video game that has nothing to do with the movie.
I didn't know that.
You can watch it later. There's a clip of that.
Okay. I'm gonna try it later, okay? Let's move on to these. Okay, I think we covered this. Try to be two movies at the same time. And okay, so next one. The Rise of Skywalker feels more of a sequel to The Force Awakens than a movie after The Last Jedi.
Episode 9 should have just been titled "Fuck Ryan Johnson."
It's basically, it was the idea, like I think especially the idea of Kylo Ren's mask being put together.
It was put back together. Rey's parents They're nobodies, but Rey's daddy is the son of Palpatine.
The only
Snoke was created by Palpatine.
Oh, that's that sentence. Like, I created Snoke. Like, I made Snoke. Like, oh, what the? And they had a, in a tube, I had a Snoke's body in cloning. Like, this is like lazy writing. Like,
Rose Tico, you hated her. That bitch is only there for 70 seconds. You will barely notice her. She's busy studying Death Star plans.
she should have had more lines. I'm Asian, so I support Rose all the way, but she should have more lines for Rose. And the only clue that we had, like, when coming back to think of it, I think JJ's treatment always meant for Rey to be a Palpatine. Symbolic. I think symbolically, it makes sense. It makes a good story, because for the Skywalker and Palpatine to merge and bring balance to the Force. But the only clue we had before the Rise of Skywalker was the
Rey's fighting style.
When she was pointing the saber, just like when Palpatine's first lightsaber scene in Revenge of the Sith, when he was facing 4 Jedis in his chamber.
And there was, I think, not really a clue, but in retrospect, it could be a clue when Rey, when she was captured by Kylo Ren and brought before Snoke. Rey tried to lunge right after Snoke and try to kill him. And Snoke taunted her, saying, "This is the strength of a true Jedi." He was taunting her because he probably knew that she was descended from a Sith Lord. Like, that's not what a Jedi would do. That's more of a Sith move.
Really? I didn't catch that one.
We could rewatch it later.
Okay, let's do that later. Next one. Business more than creativity. 1 year apart of each film. So this goes to, like, as we mentioned before, when you push, there are two things here. Two things that can come out of this. Either you push creative people to their limit and they come out with something very creative and out of the box thinking, or you get the Rise of Skywalker, where it's
cookie cutter bullshit.
You're just trying to, not be poetic and
you're just trying to bang out a movie and get it over with.
Yes, that's the basic idea of what we are trying to analyze here. And just, a lot of the things, especially the magic and the beauty of a Star Wars, of a space fight, would be goosebumping, like
high stakes
that we're excited for. Not, we're gonna know what happens. Like, there's no poetry in the battle of Exegol at all. Like, when just the music of John Williams, just like, when all the ship from all the rebels, and they're just people, like, when they're appearing, like, I would say, like, hundreds of thousands of ship appear, and then they're just fighting for, like, there's no chemistry in fighting at all. We feel like the last battle of the the last battle of the Skywalker saga, it meant nothing.
And the stakes were pretty bad to begin with, because supposedly for a fleet where each Star Destroyer has the power to destroy a planet, you would think they would use that technology on the fleet.
Yes, but they didn't use it.
They didn't use it at all, huh?
They didn't show, like, the battle of Exegol wasn't as monumental as, I would say, in the modern day, when Rogue One, the battle of Scarif was like, when the rebels arrive at Scarif, it's like, oh my god, this is happening. But when comparing to The Last Jedi, it was like, okay, the ships are arriving, and okay, what are you gonna do next? There was no chemistry at all. It's like this is going back to the point of, they're just trying to finish this and get it over with. Okay, next one. Bob Iger's business on mistake on release dates. I think this was mentioned in his autobiography that he sort of said it was his mistake. I didn't read his whole thing, but only like titles and some paragraph on it. He was trying to push Star Wars, which Star Wars you cannot push.
Exactly.
Like we mentioned in the after the first trilogy, it was 16 years after, and then we have episode 1, and then after episode 3 we had 10 years, and then The Force Awakens.
And my opinion is that Bob Iger saw this completely from a business standpoint.
Point of view. Completely only business.
He spent $4 billion buying Lucasfilm,
and he's trying to get it back
and
as soon as possible.
And he was trying to get a return on his
as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Which we have 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. 5 years, 5 films. It's too much for Star Wars film. I think it's good as a fan that you get to see Star Wars every year, but when you own Star Wars, you gotta know the more people wait, the more they crave.
I think that Star Wars, for me, like speaking, like you're more of a fan of like the movies and like the Mandalorian and the 2 animated series. For me, Star Wars was more on the video games and the comic books and the graphic novels. Like that kept me up, even though there was like a 10-year gap between episode 3's release and The Force Awakens. 7. I was still consuming Star Wars. I didn't need a film. I had video games, I had books, and I had toys. It's like I had all the Star Wars I needed. And for me, maybe it's a little contradictory, but maybe it feels like there's an oversaturation of Star Wars.
There's too much.
And when there's too much, it loses its value.
Yes. But we're still, I'll still watch it, but
watch it, but I'll feel a little less excited.
Yes. Next one. Bob Iger's feeling towards George Lucas, and George Lucas feels betrayed on Disney. On 2 and 1. It's the same topic.
Like George Lucas,
he had a treatment.
I think one of his stipulations, like when they bought Lucasfilms, was that they should use George Lucas's treatment, and Bob Iger was like, we'll take a look at it, and then
he feels betrayed. George Lucas feels betrayed.
They trashed it
because they didn't, it was. Now I want to see what could have been for Lucas's trilogy. It was about microscopic beings controlling the force behind the force.
People say that, and they say, "Oh no, it's another one of George Lucas's things." I think with the idea for Rey was already put in place well before Disney bought Lucasfilms. I think the idea, the concept of the character was named Kira,
which was used in Solo.
Exactly, and instead of Finn, it would have been his name. His original name was Sam, and instead of Kylo Ren, I don't think the character had a name. He was just titled the Jedi Killer. And that was all the elements that they had. Like Kira would have been a scavenger who would eventually train to become a Jedi. Luke at some point would be disillusioned and go into exile, but he would make his return.
Not like...
Those elements were already put in place.
Because since he was like, I think it was Mark Hamill's interview when he was like, when he after he finished Return of the Jedi, that when calculated, they were like
it was sometime in
2011.
2011.
That's
So it
what
was
he
only
said.
off by a few years.
Off by a few years, but you know, he was planted already. But I think I read something about it was supposed to be 4 trilogies as well. The one that George has planted. So that'd be interesting what he had intended. I don't know what we'll see when we'll see it, you know. I'm interested in like what George is.
And they'll probably go into one of your points later on. It's like George Lucas would, his ideas would sort of shift as time progressed. Like Leia was not originally supposed to be Luke's sister.
Yeah. But that was that's another point on writing, on how Lucasfilm has been operated through the years when they were writing the original trilogy as well, and then when George was writing prequels as well. So on to the next one, last shot meaning. So the last shot on the Rise of Skywalker is back on Tatooine, and I remember you telling me that you didn't like the last shot on the
Because
Rise
for
of
me,
Skywalker.
it did not mean anything. Look, with the twin suns, with when the binary sunset was playing in A New Hope, you could get the meaning behind that scene with Luke Skywalker. He's looking at the twin suns. He's conflicted between his desire. If he stays on the planet, he'll always stay miserable. But he feels like he has a greater destiny. Like there are two conflicting forces. That's the symbolism behind the two suns. And he feels like there's something greater in his life. So that was perfect. And with Revenge of the Sith, at the ending of it, when they show Beru and Owen carrying baby Luke, and they're staring at the two sons again. That was okay. That was again probably for nostalgia purposes. That was well placed because it shows
that they're back.
Luke as a kid, back at the very beginning. It rhymes. Now with this, number one, they did it already with The Last Jedi when Luke died. They did it with him staring at the twin suns before he disappeared. And that's associated with Luke for me, not with Rey.
So this last, I semi agree with him, but I think it was a good, one to close out the trilogy, the saga for even. But I don't know, like I like it and I don't like it. So
plus, it's kind of funny that Rey buried the lightsabers of Luke and Leia in the one planet that they probably hated. When you think about it, Anakin hated Tatooine. Luke wanted to get the fuck out of Tatooine. Leia was enslaved by Jabba the Hutt in Tatooine. Like, why the fuck would you bury the two lightsabers in Tatooine?
Because it was all where it all began.
I know. And I understand that logic. It's just funny for me. That's not really a criticism. It's just an observation.
You see the memes that Anakin's face was like when he was like, "You buried my lightsaber in the sand," like that's funny. So okay, next point. Rey Skywalker in the future.
Upon my second watch, I'm actually not that opposed to it because I look at it this way: she may be a Palpatine by blood, but she chose to be a Skywalker.
So anyone can be a Skywalker from now.
Well, that's a very marketable thing by Disney. Anyone can be a Skywalker.
Okay. That makes sense for the future films, though. Future trilogy, maybe? Episode 10, 11, 12.
And
Rey might come back.
supposedly, this is the end of the Skywalker saga, but I am almost positive we will see more Skywalkers in some way, shape, or form in the future.
That's on to our next topic. Rey pregnant in the future.
When you noticed when Rey was revived by Ben Solo, he placed his hand over her stomach. So, I feel like Disney, being what they are, would probably show like that's the way that
That's
Rey
the way.
can have a child, because that is Ben giving his life force
Yes.
to Rey.
So he couldn't have died just putting like life force onto Rey. So he gotta put extra life force onto Rey, another life into Rey as well.
Exactly.
That's, you never know, right?
You never know.
We would say this is how they come back with episode 10.
And you'll probably cut this, but we have the sense that in the sequel trilogy that, you know, Force ghosts can do anything. They can summon lightning.
They can create
lift,
life.
They can... Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Can Force ghost fuck? Can Rey fuck Kylo from beyond the grave?
Oh, that's too...
That's too risque. That's not...
That
that's
you can't
R-rated.
put that on a Disney Star Wars.
But the fan fiction writers are definitely typing right now.
For sure, this is how they're gonna come back for episode 10. Mark our words. Okay, next one. Lazy choice in bringing Palpatine back. Even Ian said if George was still in charge, George wouldn't have brought back Palpatine.
And I think one of the directors who was originally slated to one of the people who was originally slated to direct said that in my script we did not plan to bring back the Emperor
At all. It shouldn't have brought back Emperor. Especially when they were... Let's go to the point as well. So this was a slap into George Lucas's face. This was a slap to George Lucas for doing episode 1 to 6. Because episode 1 to 6 was about Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader and his journey to bring balance back to the Force. And this was just like with the whole one sentence and stuff in the opening sequence, like, I have been your every voice, and you have Darth Vader's voice coming in and breathing. Like, this sums up to just like, you know, if they had a, you know, from George Lucas episode 1 to 6, they just tear it up and burn it.
I agree and I don't agree. I think the Palpatine coming back is one of the laziest things that you could do for cinema. But if JJ was directing all 3 films, I think he would have hinted at it, that Palpatine would come back. It doesn't excuse it. I was completely opposed to it.
Don't get us wrong. Don't get me wrong. If you go back to watch the if I uploaded the video when they first announced the Rise of Skywalker and initial
I was
reaction,
excited.
their initial reaction that I had in Chicago when they first announced, they first released the trailer, that there was a Palpatine's laugh at the end. We're like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Palpatine's back! The Rise of Skywalker logo coming up. Like, we were so excited. But after watching it, I'm like, you know.
Fuck, this movie sucks.
Oh, the way they executed, like, oh no, oh my god. Okay, next one. Oh, this is a major one. So they should have put Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker, on the Death Star talking on the Death Star, on the wrecks of the Death Star, talking to Kylo Ren, not Han Solo.
Because originally they chose Han Solo, and it wasn't so much, people thought it was like a Force ghost, but it was really Ben's memory of Harrison Ford, which was stupid. They should have just had
Anakin,
right?
So that would tie the prequels. You know, people would know that they were going up. They would see Anakin like talking, because since The Force Awakens, he was trying to finish what Darth Vader has started. It would make sense for them to try to tie the prequels to the sequel trilogy as well.
And he thought that he was speaking to Darth Vader. That's why he was obsessed about the mask. So it would be poetic to have Anakin Skywalker actually speak to him and say, "Hey, Palpatine gypped you. He gypped me. You gotta go back to the light. Fuck him up for me."
It's like because they will it contradicts that in the opening sequence that Palpatine was saying, "I've been your every voice," and Palpatine was speaking for Darth Vader, but Palpatine is not Darth Vader, so Anakin was Darth Vader. Anakin is Darth Vader, and Anakin is speaking in terms of himself, not using Darth Vader's voice by Palpatine.
Though I think altering your voice, I think that's not exactly. Again, I know you're probably going to disagree with me. I think altering your voice isn't exactly an ability that's unknown to Palpatine. Like when when Anakin decided to join the Sith, Palpatine sort of altered his voice a bit.
What do you mean? Which one?
When Palpatine said, "From now on, you are Darth Vader." He modified his voice a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It became much more deeper.
Mm-hmm.
We can rewatch that.
Yeah, I remember that scene.
So it's not out of hand to have Palpatine modify his voice to sound like Vader or to sound like Snoke or whoever.
Okay.
I know it's a bullshit excuse, but it's not impossible.
Okay, so this is our big one. Like, we agree on this that this should be Anakin instead of Han Solo.
Exactly.
So much. And George original treatment for episode 7, the microscopic being controlling the force. We covered this already. 1 year apart for film, we covered this already. Oh, next one. Leia's training with Luke. So this, it was, where did you learn this before? That actually when Yoda was speaking of there was another hope. It was Leia in the Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi or Return of the Jedi. That they mentioned this, like Leia was actually training to be a Jedi as well, and she chose the Resistance because she was needed at the Resistance more than training to become a Jedi with Luke. And in the Rise of Jedi, they just included that scene when she was training, and I think they had de-aging technology with Luke and
it worked
Leia.
well on Mark Hamill, but for Leia, it made her seem a little bit too much like a video game character, kind of, sort of.
I don't know. I like it, but for me, I like it.
I know.
Okay, so it was like when they were trying to put that scene into it, like it
felt like it was just inserted in there.
Yeah, in there just to have a purpose. It wasn't like the story wasn't put there to make.
I feel like J.J. Abrams is the type of person. Here, I made something look cool. Well, where's the script? I don't have a script. Here's something cool. Like there's no. It feels unnatural.
It feels unnatural.
I think the scene was nice. It could have been placed maybe not in this movie, maybe
it was
in one of the previous 2 movies.
Or something. Don't get us wrong. We love it. I love it that we got to see Leia training, Leia to have a lightsaber. But the way they
Mark Hamill pre-car accident.
Yes. But the way they execute them is like it was like again this goes back to the point of they're being forced to meet this timeline and not being able to put this in with chemistry and stuff to make the film more flowing and stuff. Okay, so this next one, missed opportunity for Lando entering the Falcon cockpit. So remember we had Han entering the cockpit, Luke entering the cockpit. We didn't have Leia because she didn't fly at all. But this is the Millennium Falcon. This is Lando's prize, Lando's beauty, Lando's everything. We didn't have that scene of him entering, re-admiring the Falcon cockpit again. I think this was a missed opportunity. So much.
I didn't really think about that, but yeah.
He should have. Because this is Lando's ship. And you know what would it be? What would be good as well? A line of him saying hello to L33 or L33 or his droid which lived in the Falcon. This would tie back to Solo. It's like, how are you doing, L33 or something, right?
Because hello, old girl.
Yeah, or something. Because this would be because she is now the navigational system of the Falcon. You know, this could be included. You know, this was a missed opportunity or something. Okay, so next one, transporting object through space. So this goes back to the last Jedi when they were connecting the Force through the Force. And the first one, I think it was water on Act 2 when they were Rey was calling Kylo Ren lying snake and stuff, and you know, at the end of the conversation, the wave of the ocean blasts through Rey's face, and then Kylo Ren feels the water on his Star Destroyer on Snoke's ship, and then that was the first, you know, in any Star Wars film where the Force can connect or transport object through space. So
I'm not actually opposed to that. You hated that?
No, I was like, it was so Jedi can now give each other.
No, the transporting the object was fine, but like when they were fighting each other, even though the other person wasn't really there, that was too weird. So technically, you can transport yourself to other places.
Yes.
Now.
So why do you need ships and light speed?
Need ships? Yeah, exactly. You could just force bond and teleport yourself, and yeah.
That's teleportation.
Exactly. It's like there's no sense of. I don't even know what to call it.
Yeah, that's
a bad idea. Objects, it's okay, or momentarily touching, but like extended fighting.
It's a cool idea, but
yeah, it's a cool idea. That's what
I don't know. Next one. Should have been lightsaber. Yes, this goes back to should have been a lightsaber fight between Rey and Palpatine. Instead of just, you know,
Rey pulling up two lightsabers and her vaporizing and Palpatine. And I am all of the Jedi. Actually, that is part of the likes that I did like that the voices of the other Jedi did.
Yeah, I like it too. So
Kanan, Anakin, Obi-Wan,
Ahsoka,
Luminara,
Mundi or something.
Ayla Secura.
Yeah. Next one.
Yeah.
I like that Ahsoka is in there as well. So we can assume Ahsoka is dead, right?
Yeah, she gone.
Okay. Finn's almost died. Okay.
Finn almost died? Oh,
and with that
when they were attacking the Star Destroyer.
Yeah, when they were falling down. They should have been more meaningful.
Well, I don't think that they would kill off Finn, so I didn't really feel anything towards that.
Okay. Next one. The usage of binary sunset theme.
No, we covered that.
For the ending we used previously in the Jedi. Okay. Lucas' way of doing and writing after one film always something. Okay. So this goes back to the execution. So this, I think it's what separates Lucasfilm from Marvel Studios. As we talked earlier, like when we are on the way home, we were talking about the difference between Marvel, where they have planted, you know, sequels after sequels, movie after movies, and leading to Thanos. But Lucasfilm, the way they have been doing it, 1 through 6, 4 to 6, 1 to 3, it was all in Lucas's head. But it was written by one person, or Lawrence Kasdan's for it was written together, but the majority of decision would be George Lucas. And the way when he was doing it, when he was finished one film and goes on to another film, it was partially planted, but not all the details were planted. That forces him to come up with new ideas to overcome the previous one. And that makes sense. And I think Kathleen Kennedy was trying to implement this way of filmmaking, but with different directors. For him to challenge different directors to come up with their own unique ideas to impress the audience. But with JJ, on to Rian Johnson, on to Colin Trevorrow.
It was a mess.
It was a mess.
A convoluted mess with left me. I'm sure you could mention this, or maybe you mentioned it previously. When I watched the ending of The Rise of Skywalker, I was like, well, what changed? What has really changed? They're back to what they were
in The Force Awakens.
Not in Return of the Jedi. Like, okay, the First Order is defeated, the Jedi might come back. Like, what else is new? What is the new thing that has been added? That's my issue. It's like
they were doing it. It feels like they were just doing this for the money,
which is not bad, but you would think with all the money that they spent making this movie, they would get a competent writer to bring something maybe familiar, but still something new to Star Wars.
All in all, they should have spent more time before hashing out the trilogy.
Because the problem isn't the cast. Like, the cast, given the material, they did as fine a job as they could.
They did a good job. Like Adam Driver, he did a good job.
Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley
portraying Kylo Ren, amazing job. Daisy Ridley, Rose, Finn, everyone did a good job.
But the problem is just the writing. The writing with some of the dialogue, and the writing in terms of the overall structure. Because The Force Awakens, again, I get it. It was purposely made to remind people that Star Wars is back. But The Last Jedi was completely controversial. Even though Rian Johnson, he did create something new, a new take on Star Wars, it was not what people wanted. I personally did not like it. And JJ, with The Rise of Skywalker, I felt that he was, again, creating two movies for the price of one, and there was nothing really new that he was adding. I'm not going to say I hate the movie, I just feel disappointed that this is the best that we got. I'll still watch more Star Wars personally after this, but when it comes to the movies, I'll always have a little bit of skepticism. Mm-hmm. And that's another question. This isn't really a like or dislike, like what the hell is going to happen next? Because they are eventually going to make more movies after the First Order and Rey and Poe and Ben Solo and whatnot. What's next? They can't bring back the Empire again, because we already have two trilogies and technically two anthology movies where there's rebels in it. I'm kind of sick of the rebels versus the Empire thing. I want something brand new. We could do something new. That's the thing with Star Wars. It has infinite storytelling potential. You cannot repeat the same thing. For me. Mm-hmm. And if Lucasfilm is doing it to please a bunch of fans who haven't seen a Star Wars movie since 1983, look, that's on them. For me, Star Wars, I grew up on the prequels. People say that the prequels are bad. They're flawed, but I enjoyed the story and
I
the
enjoyed the
concept
story
behind
too.
it. And that's Star Wars for me. The sequels, it doesn't feel like it's part of a saga. It just feels like someone copying someone else's homework and slightly changing some of the answers.
Yep.
I like them. I like them. I don't hate them, but I feel like we could have gotten something new.
Much better one, right?
Not much better, just different.
Okay. Next one, Lucas Soul Writing Person. So as we go back to, they should, if you want to hire someone, I think you should hire them for the whole trilogy.
But J.J. Abrams specifically did not want to direct the whole trilogy. That's the funny thing.
It was choice that he wanted to go back. He was asked to go back to The Rise of Skywalker. And Lucas did write the whole 4 to 6 and 1 to 3, 1 to 6. If you want something different, you have to.
I think
Make it
my choice in retrospect would have been have JJ direct, because he does know how to make visually beautiful movies, and have Ryan Johnson write
it.
and maybe have someone else co-write with Ryan Johnson. And maybe you would have had a trilogy that looks nice, is a little different, but isn't too crazy and isn't too out there.
Okay. Next one. George's Shit Face by Disney. I think we covered this already. So I feel that
Wasn't even invited into the premiere.
I think he was invited, but he chose not to go because he saw the Rise of Skywalker already. So the plot line is that. So to put it into picture, this is Lucas's face. This is a bag of poop. This is what Disney does. Because the whole thing was about Anakin Skywalker bringing balance to the Force. And with a sentence or two, he just said Palpatine was behind all of it. It doesn't make any sense at all. With a sentence or two, Disney ruined the whole saga, the whole story of over 40 years that George has created.
At least until they reboot the whole thing.
This is not closing out the whole saga. This is just.
Here's our bag of shit. Eat it.
My God. Okay, next one. So do we have any more things to talk about before we pay tribute to the late princess? This is the night 3 years ago. This is actually the morning of December 28, 2019, and the night of 27th, which 3 years ago we lost our princess during the showing of Rogue One, which was her last word on. Actually, it's a poetry in a sense that her only word and last word in Rogue One was hope. Do you have any more things to talk about from the Rise of Skywalker?
Nothing really. I said what I needed to say.
Okay.
I think people should give this movie a chance, and they should make their own judgment.
Yeah,
I was not too crazy about it. There were still things I like about it, but I was disappointed. That's my opinion. What about you, Charlie?
The same. There are things I like, and a lot of things I pick up, like a lot of cameos. I think a lot of things. We can forget. I like the score of John Williams' score when Ray and Kylo Ren were entering Exegol. That's like the music that goes back to the like exciting music, like my pronouncing the score when they were entering Exegol. That's John Williams. That's like sort of the same as Duel of the Fates in the Phantom Menace, and I like it. We have to thank John Williams for closing out the trilogy as well, and closing out 40 years of Star Wars. We cannot forget John Williams at all.
Exactly.
And that's basically it.
Yeah.
Any more things to say? So last thing. Oh, one of the last thing that we want to talk about, it's the it's sort of, you know, when I think Carrie Fisher is the life and body of Star Wars, our Princess Leia, and her life and her, you know, she's a symbol, and symbolically she died the same time as, figuratively, in reality she died in 2016, and her last film is The Last Jedi, which she's twin with Luke Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker died in The Last Jedi. Technically, they're connected, and Luke did die in The Last Jedi and on film, and Carrie Fisher did die in reality. I think that's a metaphor, or that's like,
If it's a metaphor, I don't know what it's saying. How about you tell me?
I think it's like she's connected to Star Wars, her life, and they both die on the same year. I think that's a poetry worth mentioning. I think
Yep. I agree.
they did die in the same year. Figuratively speaking, I think that's a poetry worth mentioning. Her last word is hope in the Rogue One when she died. Okay, 3 years, and we have the end of the Skywalker saga. And the way JJ paid tribute to her, it was really touching as well. So rest in peace, our princess. You're the one that belongs to the clouds. And closing out the Skywalker saga. So may the force be with you.
Always.